I'm calling this meeting to order. It's a work session Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 at 1 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion, and we will begin with the roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
English is here.
District 3. Supervisor Judd is here representing District 3. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 956-825-278#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. For the purpose of introductions, there's someone in the room. I guess I'm going to introduce Jackie Watkins, but if someone else speaks, they can introduce themselves as they begin to make a comment or speak. Other than the Board of Supervisors, we kind of know we're here and our voices, unless you want to, of course. Everyone's allowed if they want to. Okay, so we're going to have our discussion and direction on flood control districts, and welcome Mark Appel. We're going to have our discussion on the floodplain ordinance regulations and that flood control district I just said. So I'm going to turn the time over to Ms. Jackie Watkins. She's our Director of Engineering, and it has Joaquin Solis on here. Is he online?
No, he had to go to an ADQ meeting that then scheduled.
Well, we're very, very happy to have you here, Ms. Watkins. Please continue.
So this is the update on regulations. So flood control district regulations started in 1984 after some of the major floods that happened in Arizona in the early 80s that the state required develop the regulations for flood control districts. So these updates are to comply with the updates that have been happening with FEMA for the National Flood Insurance Program, and to be in compliance with that, and our community rating system, which is the CRS, that provides the citizens in the county a 5% decrease on their flood insurance premiums. And this is all run by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. They're the state liaison with FEMA for the National Flood Insurance Program. And this is to comply with their state model that they've updated this last month to comply with some definitions and some updated regulations. So we will be bringing this to the board because to update the regulations, we have to bring it to the board for public comments, and we'll be doing that in the middle of July, and then in August, we will bring the ones to adopt depending on the public comments that we have.
Okay.
Does it have to be published?
Yes. Yes, and we will do that. Right. So this is to comply with the ADWR's model ordinance. And one of the big changes that we're asking the board to approve is that all houses be elevated 1 foot minimum from the highest adjacent grade. We don't have that in our current reg. That's not required by the state or FEMA. We would like it to have in our regs because this last summer, some of the homes that were flooded were not in a mapped flood zone. They were flooded, 40% of all the FEMA claims for insurance are not in mapped flood zones. And so the main rules that we have for the flood control district is trying to keep the homes safe for the residents to flooding of the homes. It's not really controlling the floodwaters. Floodwaters are going to happen, but it is trying to keep the homes safe from flooding. There's homes out there now that obviously we're not going to be able to, we don't go back, but today forward, want to try to lessen the amount of homes that get flooded in the future. And then the other major change is FEMA has updated their agriculture structures and agriculture accessory structures with definitions and requirements. So even though ag structures are exempt from zoning, not zoning regs, but development rules for buildings, they're not from floodplain regs. They do have to comply with floodplain regs.
If they're in a floodplain.
Because they are if they're in a floodplain, correct. And that's, any questions? I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at them. That's the two main reasons why we're bringing them up is the agriculture and to requirements for homes to be elevated a foot.
When agriculture builds, is it a little, do they have to go to the county at all? Do they need to go get
They need to get a floodplain
the
use
septic?
permit.
Oh, they get the floodplain permit. Obviously, if they're not an addressed location, they kind of go for that, right? The setbacks and,
Right, they still have to setbacks, and if it's something that needs a septic, they would get that from the health department.
okay.
But agriculture structures, they can do wet flood proof. So if you have a barn, saddle shed, you can put openings so that the flood water flows through the structure instead of around the structure and damaging the structure because it's diverting water depending on the size of the structure. But pole barns, corrals, they don't need a permit, but they, because they don't have walls on the side, hay barns.
Okay, just that, they'll just find out that they have to go get the floodplain permit, or do they?
Well, they
I was
always
trying to ask, do they always come in for something? They
No.
always come in for something.
They don't always. They've always had to have a floodplain use permit. Anyway, it's just, this is just updating it, making it more black and white on definitions of what this means so that it's easier for them to read it, that they can interpret instead of calling us. But agriculture has never been exempt from floodplain regs.
Okay,
They've always had to comply with floodplain regs.
well, that makes sense. I mean, that just the operation itself has to be very cognizant of what's happening floodplain wise. Yeah, okay. Farm
And and they know they don't want to put something that's going to get flooded if they don't have to.
right. Okay,
When, can I ask a question?
yes.
When you mentioned that it provides all citizens a 5% discount on flood insurance, we've had that in the past, so that's not new.
That's not new. The CRS, that program isn't renewed every 5 years.
Mhm.
And so one of the reasons why we're bringing this too is because we want the updates. We get renewed in October, so they'll start auditing us in September. These new floodplain regs will give us more points. We're going to try to go, because we're at a level 9 now, and we're going to try to go to a level 8.
That's what I thought, you know.
Yeah,
I thought,
we still want to go for another 8. They've changed the rules that we'll barely make a 9 right now without adding some more stuff into it. Because some of the points that we were getting now is just that you have to do it anyway. You're not going to get points for it. So yes, we're still trying. My goal is an 8. Joaquin's is a 7.
And that's going to be 10% off?
That would be 10% off.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, I like walk-ins.
His would be 15% off.
But that's only if you pay flood insurance, but still a good portion of us do, so. Okay,
so do most of the people who pay flood insurance probably have mortgages that require it?
Correct.
Do we have any idea how large that number is? Because I know I've gotten complaints from people who live here in Bisbee that have to pay flood insurance because they happen to be in one of the subdivisions that the water coming off the hill might flood them.
Yeah, and in Bisbee, the main channel there in Old Bisbee, that's in flood zone. All of those homes, all those structures along that in the main street are in a flood zone.
So if you don't have a mortgage, do people buy flood insurance? It is so expensive.
It's not everyone does.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm smack in the middle of the one of those flood zones in Old Bisbee, and I don't buy insurance any longer. My house has been there since the 30s too. So.
Because it's really expensive, isn't it? I've heard. I
It
haven't
can be.
experienced it.
And the flood insurance only insures the homes up to $250,000. It's not, if you have a $500,000 home, it's not going to replace a $500,000 home.
Okay.
But there is work being done by FEMA, right, to recalculate those flood elevations.
We're recalculating the flood maps for Bisbee, St. David, Huachuca City, Sierra Vista, and Hereford area. And that's, we brought that before on work sessions, and that's a 3 to 6 year project just to get through FEMA.
Right. Okay.
That being the case, why implement FEMA regulations at all?
If we don't have the FEMA regulations, then the citizens would not be allowed to get federally backed flood insurance, because the flood insurance program, you go to your insurance person and they buy it, but it's underwritten by the federal government. So they wouldn't be able to that. And then if you had a mortgage on your house, anything that's with an FDIC bank or Fannie Mae or veterans, they would not be able to get loans. They would not qualify to get loans. They, the federal government would not give them a loan, and we would not be able to get disaster assistance. If there is a disaster, we would not qualify for that.
Okay.
So it is a voluntary program.
Okay. Yeah.
Well-
Everything's voluntary. Okay. But
There's
how about,
about 2,000 communities in the United States that don't join.
okay. What about which FEMA regulations are we signing on to by saying we're going to comply with FEMA regulations? Every FEMA regulation
No.
that exists?
It's 44 CFR 59 and 60.
And that has to do with flooding, I presume.
Correct.
In what sense is NFIP National Flood Insurance, what program?
Program.
Okay. In what sense is it national?
And it's what the federal government backs for flood insurance. So it's United States, Puerto Rico.
That's it.
Okay.
Guam?
No.
Well, we don't care about that.
Yeah, and they keep changing. They update the regulations depending on what disasters happened in the last few years in the country.
Okay, let's see.
But more people that keep building in New Orleans and
Along
places along
Mississippi
rivers
Riverbed.
Below the sea
Yeah.
level.
expect the whole world to pay for their stuff when it floods. I keep going,
Don't
Well, some of
you
those
built there in the first place.
Some of those areas they can't build now. You know,
But they have in the past, and I'm
They
going,
have.
stop it, you know?
and they've realized that now. And now some of those homes have to be elevated 5 or 10 feet,
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
They're on
especially on the coastline.
Right.
They've enhanced the requirements for building.
But then you've got a nice
Parking
airport to park in.
I noticed it says ADWR is the liaison for this NFIP. Do you happen to know what do they do as the liaison?
Oh, they created the model ordinance that we're following, and they're the person who Brian Cosson is the ADWR representative, and so our regs have to be signed off by ADWR and FEMA. So he does that on the part of FEMA, to sign off on our regulations. And it's just to make sure that the communities are complying with what the regulations are.
My concern with the National Flood Insurance Program is that I don't think that it should involve corporate influence or profit.
Oh, it's not profit. They're losing money.
Whose money is
That's
it?
why they're about to let go of it.
Where did the federal government get it?
Your taxes.
Yeah. Somebody's making money, that's for sure. Let's see. In our county, what cities have assumed floodplain management, if any?
Sierra Vista, Douglas, and Wilcox.
Okay, do you know since when was Sierra Vista, by any chance?
No.
It hasn't been forever. You work for the city?
Yes, I did, but I don't remember.
Okay.
I wasn't involved with the floodplain stuff.
Okay, did you work for the city between 11 and 2014?
No.
Okay, earlier than that. I see. Okay. When you worked, I'm just curious, I don't expect you to know all the city regs. When you worked for the city, did the city say the washes are the county's responsibility? Because they did when I was on the city council.
I do not remember.
Okay, that's fine. I'll
Because they're in their jurisdiction.
ask Karen Fulsar.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
that's
Well, that's it. And we can just take this and read it when we're really sleepy and we can't get to sleep.
It will put you to sleep. I did send this out to all the agents, the cities in the county, and I am going to call a few of the builders to let them know what we're doing.
I was going to say the contractors need to get a hold of this.
Correct. And I will mention it to SACA, which is the Southeast Arizona Association of Contractors.
That's what I was thinking of, is that, you know, it needs to be
Yeah, I'll have to mention it to Zach.
And they have a meeting.
Oh, okay.
They give a lunch tomorrow.
They meet once a month, I think.
Well, I think it's always important. We know we can't control flooding
No, not.
and people expect us to. And so we've got that burden because, you know, they go, well, if the county would do this, then it wouldn't flood. And go, well, we can't change streams. We can't, you know.
It's gravity.
But I think that we're doing what we can to protect the roadways because that is a responsibility of ours to help people get in and out. And I guess thinking of it rightfully so, people are more concerned about their property than they are about the roadways.
Correct.
And from our concern, we're more concerned about the roadways than we are of your property specifically.
The property flooding is not as much a concern as the home flooding.
Right.
Our regulations are to control building in the future because we're a very sparsely populated county right now. And we don't want to keep having 50 or 60 homes flooded every year because they're not building them high enough.
Right.
So this will help for the future not to have the same flood issues we have today for structure damage.
I think our city is already doing that from what I see, because there's a few new homes there and they are built so high off the street,
Yeah, they are. Like Caleb is, yeah.
18 inches.
Because we've talked to them on flood stuff, and they're going to some of the flood meetings and flood conferences.
I'm going to see Stephen Klump, like, probably tomorrow. Do you want me to take
Yeah,
one
go
to
ahead and get
him?
one.
Okay. There's an extraordinary thing. Because I think of all the people in town, he's probably the one I can think, well, since I'm going to see him.
Yeah, and they can.
He'll have
We'll
hard
have it on our website, and then that they can email us any comments that they have on it. Thanks.
And it will go into effect.
30 days after you adopt it in August.
Okay. So we need to tell them that, you know, it isn't now, it's after 30 days after adoption.
And the major change is the 1 foot for all homes.
So really, there's not a lot.
The agriculture structures, it's not a change. It's just that we have definitions now.
Okay.
They always had to comply. It's just it wasn't really clear that they had to comply.
All right. That's good. I always like it when, I like it better when there's no change or when everything's get easier. But one little tiny change and one clarification is acceptable. Thank you for bringing this to us today. And is there any other questions from the board or comments? All right. I hate to just let this meeting out 20 minutes in, but.
No, that's a good thing.
Oh, okay. Then I need to announce the next meeting. Our next meeting will
Not
be
beat it to death.
next. Okay, I'm so glad we only took 19 minutes. Next
Right.
meeting will be on Tuesday, July 11th at 9 a.m. for a special meeting, executive session in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room. And I am going to adjourn this meeting at 1:19.